Welcome to today's session on driving decisions in projects and organizations. I'm Brent Peckover, a project management professional, chartered professional accountant, master's in business administration graduate, and professional engineer. My passion is the intersection of business and technology, and how companies can leverage organizational behavior and culture to positively impact their operations, clients' businesses, and society at large. Over my career, I've had the opportunity to lead teams developing and launching new innovative offerings into wildly different market segments. Most recently, I've been the product owner for the development of a new far UVC product that can be used to disinfect occupied spaces. In my previous role, I built a global PMO group and shifted organizational thinking from project-based decision-making to portfolio-based decision-making. I've also led teams responsible for external project delivery, with staff ranging from proposal writers through design engineers to on-site field personnel. In today's world, we are members of all sorts of teams. Creating environments and enabling staff to achieve efficient and effective team performance is the responsibility of every leader and team member. Our objective is to drive timely, quality decisions with minimal loopbacks. For those not familiar with a loopback, it's when a decision needs to be revisited. We need to keep in mind that decisions take effort. Energy must be expended to arrive at a decision. This is why Einstein and past President Barack Obama famously limited their wardrobe to a single style and color of suit, so they could save their mental energy for more important decisions. When it comes to making efficient and effective decisions, sufficiently articulating the decision is important. Einstein once said, "If I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it." Let's talk about what goes into effective decision making. First, we identify the need to make a decision. It sounds silly, but there are times where it can shift the team's thinking. Okay, so we need to make a decision. Exactly what decision is it that we need to make? As we saw in the previous quote, defining the problem is extremely important. When does the decision need to be made by to avoid delaying the project? Are we clear on the level of authority that is required to make the decision? We have all at some point in our careers heard the words, "This is above my pay grade." While we may have identified the minimum level of authority, have we identified who exactly is in the hot seat to make the decision? Will it be a single individual or consensus of a group? What inputs are required and conditions must be met for the decision to be made? By this point, we've made a lot of decisions about our decision. We need to communicate all of this information to the many stakeholders, as well as ensuring the decision maker knows their role and the input providers are clear on what is needed by when. Can we provide a recommendation? All right, the decision has been made. Now the real work begins. We need to communicate the results of the decision to all those who are impacted. How and in what form will this communication occur? Who is impacted and what now needs to happen? These were probably identified as inputs into the decision, but now the realities of the impact need to be addressed. Let's look at all of these in more detail. Identifying the need to make a decision. Ever sat in a meeting of peers where discussion goes around and around on a particular topic? Next time, stop, step back, and assess if different points of view are being provided, and a decision needs to be made around how to proceed. The act of consciously choosing to make a decision changes our thinking process and can focus the team. Try to articulate the decisions that need to be made. Better yet, rather than defining the items to be discussed on your next meeting agenda, try defining the decisions expected coming out of the meeting. Are there crucial program decisions that need to be made before becoming critical path items? Try putting them in your program reports. Risk registers are a way to articulate potential project variation. Another way to think about a risk register is a list of potential project pivot points, where alternative action needs to be taken to prevent, reduce, or react to the changing situation. In many cases, these mitigation response activities require decisions and authorizations to be made, which brings us to our next topic. How you articulate the decision needed, that is to say, the words you use, can artificially expand, contract, or shift the decision space. An excellent example of this is highlighted in the book A Beautiful Constraint by Adam Morgan and Mark Barden, where the authors recount the story of the development of the Audi R10 TDI race car. Normally, when designing a new race car, one would start with a question around speed. How can we design a faster car? However, the chief engineer chose to rephrase the question to shift thinking to a different area of the solution space. The question put forward was, how could we win Le Mans if our car could go no faster than anyone else's? This prompted the team to consider ways to reduce the number of stops, which drove the adoption of diesel technology into Le Mans race cars for the first time. As a result, the R10 TDI placed first at Le Mans for the next 3 years. Like all project activities, decision-making works best when the timeline is understood by all parties. Want to make really fast decisions on a project? Anticipate and socialize the decision in advance. Heck, if the decision can be made now, there's no need to wait. If the decision depends on some result, can an if-then-else framework be created? Let's say we need to make a decision on if performance is acceptable. Can we quantify performance and define a minimal level of acceptability? Now the team isn't held up waiting for a decision. They measure performance and immediately know if it is or isn't acceptable. While the decision is predefined, I still recommend, as a courtesy, updating the decision maker once the trigger has occurred. Decision frameworks are common when it comes to requisition approval. An approval level example would be if the cost of the decision is less than $50K and the overall budget variation is less than 20%, then the program manager can make the decision. What level of authority is required to make the decision? Do it and beg for forgiveness later? Well, many times I support this. It should be used very cautiously if it exceeds your approval limit. I have to preface the next statement by the fact that I'm a control freak. I'm not a fan of group decision-making, with one exception. Unanimous buy-in should exist when setting ground rules the group will abide by. When dealing with group decision-making, be transparent about the evaluation criteria. How will the results be measured? Will the decision be decided by a simple majority? Or does the decision need to be unanimous? I have found over the years that there are two common modes of thinking. Most people think there are two boxes: those decisions that they can make, and those decisions they cannot make and must defer to others. Maybe their boss is an example. However, I've found there's a third type of decision. Imagine you're working on an important client project. There is a significant issue, which the client is concerned about. You and the team are working to address the issue. This decision is squarely within your area of accountability. There is no need to ask permission from anyone else. However, your boss goes to a trade show and happens to run into the client on the trade show floor. The client mentions their concern to your boss. Now, the best thing that can happen at this point is your boss says something like, "Thanks for letting me know. I'll follow up with John to ensure there is a resolution plan to address the issue." However, in my experience, the boss wants to demonstrate to the client how important the client is and that they will take personal responsibility to get this resolved. Your boss jumps into action and starts making calls to address the problem. Invariably, his resolution will be different than yours, and the team will get confused. Also, as you are responsible for the project, you likely have a bigger picture view of how the resolution will fit into other aspects of the project. Your boss, while his or her intentions are good, may sub-optimize the resolution. As a result, I've added a third box and call this my three-box decision theory. There are decisions you need to make that are within your level of authority, like the situation I just mentioned, but you need to raise awareness of the situation to others. Your boss, perhaps, an account manager, maybe a functional lead. Now, when your boss meets the client at the trade show and the client mentions the significant issue, your boss can respond with something like, "Yes, I'm aware of the issue, and the team understands the critical importance of the situation, and as a result are doing X, Y, and Z. And as of the last report, it was well in hand." Now the client is reassured that they are important and that things are well in hand, and your boss can shift the conversation into a more forward-looking direction. What other opportunities or challenges do you have in your organization that we can help with once this project is finished? When new staff join my team, I always tell them about Brent's 3-box decision model, and then work to ensure we are in alignment on which decisions fall into which boxes. Input data. The type of inputs will vary by the type of decision being made and the person making the decision. A little forethought and discussion with the decision maker will quickly identify the key inputs. As an example, if we are choosing between alternatives, we likely need performance data on each alternative. Whatever inputs are identified, I guarantee you that as the consequences of the decision increase, the likelihood of questions about the input will also increase. It is crucial to anticipate this need and have people available to answer the questions. In instances where answers are not readily available, try using an if-then-else framework to allow the decision to be made conditional on the anticipated answer of the question. Again, follow up with the decision maker and let them know which path the decision took. Communication plays a central role in everything we do. When it comes to articulating the decision to be made, the way we frame it and the words we choose make a difference. We need to be clear when the decision needs to be made and whom is making the decision. Those providing the required inputs must understand what is needed, by when, and in what format. We also need to ensure those impacted by the results of the decision are aware of how the results will be communicated to them. Ever had an impacted group get missed on a distribution of the outcome of a decision? If the decision is being planned for in advance, or the decision is likely to be recurring, agree on a channel that will be used to communicate the results. Can a recommendation be made for this decision? As the project, program, or portfolio manager, you are in an excellent position to make a recommendation. When I ran the PMO at Christie, I always encouraged my program managers to recommend a particular option. As a manager, this helps me understand the current level of thinking of a team member. It also provides an opportunity to shape that thinking going forward. Why is this the best answer? Have you considered X, Y, and Z? Equally important, when the decision maker chooses to depart from the recommendation, seek to understand why. This shows them that you want to develop a deeper level of understanding. You want the decision maker to say, here is why this is the best answer. You may not always agree, but this provides the opportunity for you to appreciate other points of view and better align your decision-making process for the future. There is a book, Accountability Leadership by Gerald Cranes, which has an interesting graphic shown here on the right. It demonstrates the time horizon that individuals working at different levels in the organization should be working at. When we are talking about shaping the thinking of our subordinates to grow into future roles, we typically need to extend their thinking to longer time horizons, which means accounting for other stakeholders. Sure, you can finish the project and meet the contractual requirements, but our goal is to have a satisfied customer who will buy from us again and brag about the amazing system or service they received. We can also use default decisions to drive results. Need to choose between multiple options? Do you have a recommended path forward? Send a note reminding the decision maker of the need for the decision, that you recommend option A, and if you don't hear from them by Friday, December 17th, the decision deadline, that you will deem their silence as implicit agreement and proceed with this path. This will tend to have one of 3 outcomes. 1, the person may respond immediately and authorize you to proceed with the recommended path. 2, the person may respond immediately and direct you to take a different path. Or 3, the person may not respond, and you proceed as you indicated you would. There is one other outcome that sometimes happens when you take this approach. The person asks for more time. In most cases, this is good, as it shows that they are engaged and acknowledge their role in making the decision. If they don't provide a new timeline, push for one. Going back to how we phrase the decision to be made, can we shift the response by biasing the question being asked? Retirement savings would be an excellent example of this. Imagine you are onboarding 100 people to a company. I think we can all agree that it is in every employee's best interests to save for retirement. If we ask them, do you want us to deduct money from your paycheck for retirement? we are likely to have a different level of participation in retirement savings than if we ask, with respect to retirement savings, we recommend investing 5% of your weekly pay. How much money would you like to contribute to invest in retirement savings each week? While we talk a lot about being unbiased, sometimes biasing can be a great tool to encourage the best answer for everyone. So we have a decision. Exactly what aspects of the decision are being communicated? By whom, when, and using which communication channels? What are the potential implications if the message is misunderstood? Is the recipient likely to have questions? The decision being communicated may now trigger a collection of other decisions that need to be made by the recipient or the team. Context may be very important. Decision communication channels vary. Changing the meeting location? Likely an email or text is all that is needed. Decided to change the launch plans for a new product? A meeting of several people is likely the right answer. Decided to exit someone from the team? Better plan a one-on-one sit-down. Decision impacts. What tasks and processes are impacted by this decision? What people are impacted by this decision? Will this decision cause pain? Is there a way to reduce the pain? Let's talk about team resiliency for a minute. Remember the earlier slide which showed different time horizons that individuals working at different levels of the organization tend to function at? We all have an opportunity, and I would argue a responsibility, to build and develop the teams and individuals within our organization. When all decisions go through one person, the program manager as an example, it can cost time, increase program risk should that person leave or become unavailable due to vacations or meetings, and rob others of the chance to provide value add and grow their decision-making capability. As such, I try to encourage staff to push the decision down the organization to the level that is best equipped to make the decision that is as close as possible to the situation. In order for this to work, the team needs to be crystal clear on the objectives and the priorities. Think about a special operations military team. Each team member brings something unique to the team. You would not usually ask the sniper if you should try to disarm an improvised explosive device you just found. There will be times where the team can operate autonomously, and others where more oversight or coordination is required. Remember Brent's 3-box decision model? Admittedly, when we are talking about decisions involving multiple groups, this tends to be the domain of the program manager, deputy or assistant program manager, project manager, or even project coordinator. However, if you have a PMO or a hierarchy of staff managing a project, take the opportunity to develop the decision-making capability of the less experienced team members. Does your project have a project manager and a project coordinator? If the project coordinator comes to you, as the project manager, for a decision, can you take the time to make this a learning opportunity? Ask them, what would they do and why? If they nailed it, agree and let them run with it. If they miss something, will that something have minimal impact on the project? Maybe let them run with it and learn the hard way. These can sometimes be the best lessons, and it builds resiliency by allowing staff to encounter failure or difficulty and learn to move on. However, if what they have missed will impact the project in a material way, ask questions to expand their thinking. And if they still don't get it, then explain it to them. Choosing to delay, avoid, or reassign a decision is still a decision. In the case a decision is delayed or avoided, work to define a trigger for when the decision will be made. Or, even better, make a conditional decision now. As identified earlier, can we put in place an if-then-else framework? In the case the decision was reassigned, work to develop an understanding of why that particular decision was delegated or reassigned to the other individual, so that in the future, you know which individual to approach to make similar decisions for this area. If communication of the decision doesn't include a written record of the decision, and the decision is significant, I always recommend creating one, in the form of meeting minutes if the decision took place during a meeting, or a follow-up email when the decision took place as a result of a one-on-one conversation or a single topic small meeting. Capturing the inputs considered, thinking behind the decision, context boundaries, and agreed to actions can also be very helpful to ensuring nothing was missed in the conversation. When I ran the display systems simulation group, which provided display systems for flight and ship bridge simulators for commercial, educational, and military clients, yes, very cool stuff. I'd always challenge my program managers to consider short and long-term options when making decisions. This was especially true when addressing system deficiencies identified during acceptance testing. Typically, deficiencies result in client pain. Options to address the client pain in the short term may be suboptimal, whereas longer-term paths may be more efficient and effective. Often we default to either short-term or long-term options, which means the client has to either live with the suboptimal answer or endure the pain until the long-term resolution is in place. In many cases, payment milestones will motivate the team to encourage the client to accept a short-term option. My advice, where possible, is to embrace the power of and. Can we afford to implement A as a stopgap measure until B is ready? Showing awareness of the impacts and the pain the client is experiencing and offering to address the pain to some extent in the short term until the longer term answer is in place shows you have the client's best interests at heart, which builds trust and credibility. Like the PMBOK, we can scale up or down the level of engagement and support for a decision based on its importance and magnitude. However, being aware of the components allows you to make discrete choices which can improve the results and your performance on projects. In summary, work to identify that a decision needs to be made. Spend time to sufficiently articulate the decision. As PMI members, schedule is extremely important to us. When do we need the decision to be made by to avoid impacting schedule? More importantly, when will we have all the inputs required, and can the decision be made in advance? Who will make the decision? Do they know they need to make a decision? What inputs are required? Who will provide them? By when? Have you thought about impacts? Do those need to be factored into the decision as inputs? How are you communicating all of these details? What recommendations can be made? And can it be framed as a default decision so that if no feedback is provided by the deadline, the project can still move forward? How are you communicating the results of the decision? One-on-one, group meeting, email, text, to whom, when, what language and context will be used? Finally, what actions need to be taken to address the impacts of the decision? Who is responsible for the actions? And when do the actions need to be completed by? For those that are interested, these are the two books that I referenced during the presentation. You can use the QR codes to find them on Amazon. Quality decisions made in a timely fashion are key to project success. So, let's get into questions.